I just put so much emphasis into trying to figure myself out. And most of that came from a feeling growing up like I didn't really know where things kind of fit in. I mean, going back to the kind of research I was doing, like we were talking about 1.5 generations and what it kind of means to be mixed up between both being Kiwi and being Chinese. I was born and raised here in New Zealand, but and I was adopted as well. So my birth parents were from mainland China. I had little to no kind of knowledge or connection with them, and that was fine because I am now older than both of my parents were than they had when they had me. Yeah, I think a lot of my kind of motivation for kind of this kind of journey of self-discovery was very much coming from a place of just being confused about a lot of things a lot of the time.
Again, I'm very thrilled to have time spending with you this time and to talk about you, really, because last time, even though we met, it was about your research, but through your conversations, the first impressions I have, honestly, Aidan, is like, these kids, you're not kids, but I mean, like, at least compared to me, like, have so much depth.
I appreciate that.
Oh, no,
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, that's why I was like, man, I had to talk to her.
No, I'd love to talk. I'm happy to share everything I got.
Aidan, and why you have so much depth on your journey, even though you're so young.
I appreciate that. No, that's a very not a kind way of putting it. I'd say for me, more than anything, I just put so much emphasis into trying to figure myself out. And most of that came from a feeling growing up like I didn't really know where things kind of fit in. I mean, going back to the kind of research I was doing, like we were talking about 1.5 generations and what it kind of means to be mixed up between both being Kiwi and being Chinese. I was born and raised here in New Zealand, but and I was adopted as well. So my birth parents were from mainland China. I had little to no kind of knowledge or connection with them, and that was fine because I am now older than both of my parents were than they had when they had me. Yeah, I think a lot of my kind of motivation for kind of this kind of journey of self-discovery was very much coming from a place of just being confused about a lot of things a lot of the time.
I think also the fact is, like you are so candid about your experience, even your parents acknowledging it, show the maturity you have. I mean, it's not, why I say that is that people who are willing to say from a place where I'm not sure why this happened to me, that's why I'm interested to find out. Is a key to the wisdom.
I think it got to a point where only in the past year or two where I was able to just kind of accept things the way they are and question them, because there was a definite point of my life where I approached everything quite angrily, I'd say. There was a definite point in kind of high school and just early life where I was, interestingly, trying to seek out the same kind of questions that I am now, but in a time of where I was really unsure during high school, everything came from a place of stress. Everything came from a place of anger. And I think it was the recognition of that during that time that made me go, I just have to change things up and try to figure myself out. So I put a lot of focus into trying to figure out these kind of methods of life using lived experience and things like that to try and just understand life paths. But from there, things like there's so many dimensions to life, stuff like academics and work. That's probably my current struggle right now.
I think probably that's why I felt like you had so much depth from your ages, and it sounds like you've been through quite a lot as well as a teen. Despite all that, you're still coming out shiny. It's like a rough diamond in making. Like anything, you have to polish it, and then they only become a diamond. Probably speak the volumes of why your research topic is so interesting, but that's not the reason. So I will let you carry on. Sorry.
I'd love if you would like me to explain for the recording what my research was kind of in. So I very much chose to go about, especially my university life, trying to figure out myself. So I went into the social sciences of politics, philosophy, and economics in order to kind of understand the world around me rather than choosing a career path and things like that. And that kind of made me love that. I mean, I've gotten to learn about theories about how people have lived life, about how the institutions around us were created. And that stuff was incredibly fascinating to me. And in the same kind of way that I look at building up institutions of society or anything like that, I also look at just life in a similar kind of way. And like the kind of institutions of culture, or sorry, of society, I I am looking at just the influences of, I guess, my own life. I just approach things in that kind of way, and that's what made that kind of social studies and political studies very fascinating to me.
I think that's amazing because you're saying, like I grew up in these environments and in this society, and nothing really made sense to me in my world. So, what is the best way to understand how the society being constructed around me?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So understanding like how people and how the wider society operate was kind of my way of understanding myself and my own influence on that, because I had always felt like I was not really happy with any of the career paths that were exposed to me. I'm the only art student in my entire family. The rest of my family are all doctors, very stereotypical in that kind of sense, but they're very good at what they do. My sister went to Oxford and stuff like that for medicine.
Honestly, I like your inquisitive mind because you're saying, you are questioning everything at your age. You're questioning about why this society is constructs in this way. Why, like we're being imposed into the value things that we are asked to do. Is it really a freedom?
Is it necessary? Like, I mean, that's kind of the stereotype of youth, isn't it? It's that we don't understand the grandiosity of what already exists, so we try to change what already exists. And I think that's a misconception. I think what it is that everything has room for improvement, and we're not actually always going to be able to improve it. But the thing is, I'm hoping that, or at least I believe that young people are the ones that have the energy to try and change up those bigger institutions that we believe are extremely stable when they maybe aren't.
I love what you're saying because it's not stable. We generation has been lying to ourselves. It's not working. No one is happy.
I don't think anybody's happy.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have so many mental health issues.
I agree. Look, it's very hard to be a political student right now because I've loved talking politics for most of my life, to the annoyance of everyone else around me. I find it just to be a very fascinating kind of thing to analyze. But you look almost anywhere in the world right now, it's disastrous at times. No matter what your beliefs, it is chaotic.
I have to say that gave me hope because your younger generation are so much attuned with what's going on politically and the sense of responsibility around the world that any of the generation has. If people like yourself can be the future leader, our world will be in a better place than any of this generation will be. And that is my honest opinion.
That once it's kind of my generation or our generation's time to take up the mantle of political leadership, once it reaches that kind of point, I think the world will be a very different place. And I hope.
Which is needed to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of why I want to put across these theories, this theory of lived experience, because that's one of the issues that I see, is that so much political tension and collision just comes from a fact of little to no cross-cultural understanding. So what I want to do is, instead of looking at cultural understanding in a way that is just, I'm going to learn chopsticks or a couple of words in order to communicate these basic ideas, I want to be able to bring to mind for everybody the nuances about how not only we just operate on big topics, just also in just regular ones as well, because I think understanding is everything. Understanding each other beyond language, beyond behavior, all encompassing is so important.
Can I ask you, because you, like, if people don't even know you, look at you, they would be thinking, especially for, like, are you 12 years old?
I don't know how to feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, just you look young, so I just want people to know you are studying at university and you're over 20 years old.
And 22, I am now 50th year university. I am fully just wearing my high school leavers hoodie. So, yeah, I definitely,
But
I know I have a baby face every now and then.
I know, but no, it's good. But Aiden, I mean, the reason why what you just say it touched so deep in my heart. I know you have that, but I didn't know how deep that go. You know, like and to have your age to really being so attuned of what's going on around your surrounding, all that means that it doesn't mean that you always be curious about the world, or is that something that you always have?
I think the curiosity in that kind of sense has evolved a lot for me. As I said before, I was angry for a lot of my youth, and a lot of that anger came from just misunderstanding. I remember the type of questions that I asked as a kid were very interesting. Like, I was the kind of kid consistently to now that asked about why things were the way they were. So you know how a kid goes, why does that the way that it is? And then you get told, oh, because this is designed for this. And then I go, but why? Why is that designed that way for, even though it still completes this task? And I often got a response of, why are you asking that? It just is. And while I can accept that to be true to some extent, I'm not exactly asking why a blender has blades or anything. That's obvious. I still approach things in the same kind of way of, I'm just confused a lot of the time. I approach everything with confusion. I prefer to describe it as confusion rather than curiosity, because curiosity makes it sound like I have any kind of idea of what's going on.
No,
Confusion is better for me.
I think you're too humble because you are asking questions that you are not satisfied just with the surface level of answer. You're saying, yeah, I know this, but I want to go much deeper.
And everything was about behavior for me a lot of the time. I was never a sciencey kind of kid, even though everyone around me was. I was always the kind of kid who took a lot of focus on how people socialized, what it meant to have friends, how did they communicate through different ages. I very much had a lot of an easier time talking with my parents' friends than I did people my own age when I was in school. Transitioning to high school out of primary school was extremely difficult for me, but I ended up just throughout like my high school life talking about these kind of topics with like my parents and their friends all the time. And nowadays, as I actually learn more about the topic, I go, well, actually, I don't like any of their opinions very much, which I find very funny because I still talk to them in a way that makes sense to them.
I love it. Oh my God, that is awesome. I mean, like, yeah, no, that is fantastic because it means that you're not just curious, you also know that there's probably something that you're not feeling aligned with who you are. Now you're talking about stages where you were curious and then you want to find out what it is, and now you learn what it is. You're saying, but it's not aligned to what I believe.
No, it's strange to come up with your own opinion on things. I was the type of kid that didn't know how to manage what was my own opinion and what was not, and I've always found that line very fascinating, because I think we are very influenced by the things around us. So once we actually, especially growing up, start to come to opinions of our own, that can be an extremely confusing time because suddenly you're believing in two things at once. And that, to me, I think defines a lot of experiences in general. It defines a human experience, which is having influences of believing two completely contrasting things. Again, I think it just comes back to putting in the time and effort and often just emotional energy in order to decide which of those contrasting things you align with more.
Because it's almost like holding two very paradoxical ideologies together. They might not necessarily gel together, but both ends still can be the truth. But it's just depending on who is experiencing it more, or what spectrum that the person is standing on.
Life is so complex like that. Two things can be true at the same time, even though we don't want it to be so. And that is extremely common in anything social related, anything ethics related. You got to realize that there's always two sides of the coin. And that's what I try to base my life off of nowadays. Just I try to manage putting in more or less emotional energy, even though I know that there is always another side of the story.
You're only 22, man. Like, I only figure things out over 50, like, far out.
Oh, I
That's
hardly believe
fascinating.
that.
No, seriously. I mean, yeah. I let you carry on. I have so many questions I want to unpack as well. I mean,
Please.
yeah, my curiosity as a 53 years old man is that as people like your age think the way you think, or you also find it hard to relate to people around your age as well.
Difficult kind of question, because I think that mental illness is also something that really kind of, I hate to say, does infect your mind and affect your opinions at points. So as much as I want to be able to blanket say, oh yes, people are thinking about these kind of things, I don't really trust that my opinion is blanket enough, because I definitely think that there's something inherent within mental illnesses that can occasionally make you very self-reflective, or just make you perceive the world around you in a very certain way that may not actually have to do with your opinions on the world. I think it's only by the point you exit that kind of state where you can see things at least a little bit more objectively for what they actually are.
So how do you handle it, Aidan? I mean, like, because you have this incredible awareness of what you are experiencing, and also are so aware of yourself, very reflective. At the same time, really seeing the world as what's going on outside. And it sounds like at times you also feel like you are more like an outsider as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it can sometimes feel like you're an outsider, not just to the people around you, but also in your own mind. At that point, that just gets very confusing. That's why you got to approach everything with a kind of curiosity, because the truth is, the way you perceive the things around you are your individual perception, and the way you operate things, it can only work for yourself. So if anybody gives you advice on things, it's what works for you. That's what works for them. And maybe it works for a lot of people, but that does not necessarily mean it works for you.
It's been a struggle. I only come to that conclusions like last year.
It's been a real big struggle for me, actually, especially in academics. I look at these ways in which people say, oh, yes, you should be thinking about this thing in this kind of way, or you want to be writing in this kind of style, or coming to this kind of opinion. And then you start to realize, actually, you always know within yourself when something is wrong. There will be things in you that tries to make you ignore that, but there will always be it's like a muscle that you just train. You train a muscle in order to be able to recognize what is your own actual opinion and then stand on that opinion.
It's like an inner knowing, like you know it's just not good. Like, when did you realize that? When did you finally? Yeah.
I think that's the kind of muscle that I'm talking about in that sense develops in everybody. For me, I'd say was realizing that some of the ways in which I've been taught just to go about my life, and how by my parents, by my teachers, by almost everybody, by the society around me, I got used to thinking that I had a very straight and narrow pathway in life, and that any break out of that was disaster. And I think that's just common. I think especially with the Asian heritage, in which so much is put on with on academics, on pushing in a very specific type of life progression, you forget the other types of progression around. And when did I learn that? Probably just when I started to realize that I was never good academically. I was never very good at it. I sucked. I could never write very well. I struggled to get things done. In the end, I was a person who prioritized my recreation a wee bit too much. Loved video games, loved my hobbies and things like that, especially at the time. And I think it was that point where I had to realize I maybe like my hobbies, and maybe that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, you are doing your honor.
So yeah, postgraduate diploma, not technically honors, but yeah.
And still, like, Aidan, I mean, can I just acknowledge that, being Asians and being pushed into certain directions, and you have to stand up to your parents and say, no, this is not who I am. As an Asian, I know how hard it is. It's not just saying no. It's like saying no again and again and again, and then being put down and being told you're not a good son. And so there's a lot of criticism usually come with posing ideas from your parents.
It's definitely troublesome. The relationship that one has with their parents can be real complicated, because I would say on a surface level that regardless of what I did, my parents were very supportive, and that almost made things more difficult, because
I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah, because I was a person who read into behavior a lot, and I could still see that I could never change my mind that my dad still wanted me to end up Ivy League. I could never change the fact that that they would look at me once they remembered the fact that I'm not going to end up in being a doctor. I think there's a lot of that, which even the most accepting people, they still have expectations, and I think that that's something that's natural with parents. And that's a difficult navigation.
Honestly, so many Asians who hear you say that would be feeling such a relief, like, because there are so many kind of fixed mindsets from Asian parents believe that their own certain career can take you to certain places, which to them come from a supportive place because they just want their children to have a secure job, knowing that they will do well in their life. And however, by doing so also means that they limit the potential of someone else, like to fully flourish into what they could have been. And the second things I also want to acknowledge is like, because all that pressure is still putting on you, and even though they say yes, doesn't matter, but what they think. Even though you have done your best, you didn't let them down, but there's still a sense of guilt that you haven't done enough.
Oh, I very much know the feeling of being the kid who was forced to sit down and try and learn piano, and tried to learn Chinese, even though I wasn't surrounded by Chinese-speaking people, which in my opinion at least, is ultimately the best way to actually learn a language of any age. There were a lot of ways in which I did not fit the blueprint of my parents or what was hoped of me. And that was tough, especially when I became a bit more of a argumentative, confronting person, because not only was I strong in what I was arguing for a lot of the time, I was also consistently arguing with people who wanted something else out of me. I enjoy arguing. I'm a person who will find an opinion of anybody and try to get to the bottom of why they believe it. I don't care what that opinion is. I'll just get it. It's my favorite thing to do.
I tell you what, like, people might don't understand because, the harder things in this world is to stand out for yourself and say, I disagree what you just say to me. It's to be honest, like, and to stand out and having that backbone to say, I'm not going to bend backwards just because you're putting pressure on me. And I think that is a strength, Aidan. I can't be more proud of who you are. I mean, like, why? Because as an Asian myself, I only finally able to find that backbone when I turned this year.
I think for me, it definitely came from a place of realizing, I think for almost anybody, it's the moment you realize that your parents are just people. It doesn't make any of your critiques on them or any of the critiques of the people around you any less real. It will always be the case that they are just people and they are just as fallible as anybody else.
Wow, that is deep. Yeah, I only come to that realization when I was 35 or close to 40. Yeah, carry on, sorry. Wow.
No, it's tough. It's tough. It was through a lot of just hearing very tough things from the people around me, a lot of supportive people that just kind of knew the situation that maybe I was in. I wanted to be the best kind of person that I could be for my friends, for my family, but in the end, I did not match a blueprint for my family. So at some point, I just said, I've got to be my own person, and that's still tough. I say that, do as I say, but not as I do, because I will not say that I'm doing amazingly at that, but I'd say that I'm taking the step.
I almost tear out because hearing what you say, I don't think for people who's not Asians, I don't think they understood the depth you had to go through to reach to that kind of conclusions. It sounds like you've been through a lot, like even as a teenager, not necessarily from physical, like because I know Asian parents are good at providing that kind of secure environment.
They very much are.
But they quite often not necessarily able to provide that kind of, like emotional support that one needs. And so it's not to the detriment of who they are. It's just unfortunately where they brought out, how they grew up, so they don't have the education. Hearing what you say, I know the journey and forest you have to walk through to come to that where there is a sky shining on your pathway to be able to say, I can breathe.
Being able to breathe in that way is incredible. It's an incredible feeling. It's very hard to understand the kind of harm that it is, but it is still undeniably harm. You can just, and again, there's never only one side of the coin. Like any kind of harm that you receive from another person, there will always be a justification from that person that makes complete sense as to why they were doing it. But it's navigating that and coming out and still being able to face the people around you that you think might have hurt you. That's tough. That's tough. Letting go of any of the anger I had definitely when I was younger was crazy.
Wow.
I was a very high emotional person, and it took a lot to break out of that and just kind of accept the surroundings that I was in on any kind of basis.
It sounds like you really have done a lot of work to, set yourself free at a very young age.
Again, in that kind of sense, I'm a very self-reflective person. I would like to hope that the work that I've put in at this kind of age on this kind of self-reflection sense will make up for the fact that the standard thinking is that around this kind of age that you do a lot of material work as well. I cannot say I've done a great amount of material work, but I can say that I hope the self-reflective work I've done helps things regardless.
So let's say now, where are you at in your journey? I mean, because this is the last year of your university.
Got to enter the workforce. That's terrifying. But where am I at? I don't know. I am far more content with kind of the way things are. I'm content with kind of being scared of things. I'm content in my faults. And I'm getting to the point where I am no longer angry at my surroundings as I was. And now I think that I'm getting to the point where I can finally shape my own life a little bit. I mean, there are a lot of theories as to how you should go about living your life. And most of the time, I think when you read those theories, you go, oh, that's ridiculous. That's far too extreme. I think the reality of those is that everybody takes pieces. And I think the pieces that we need to be taking are especially in leaving a kind of tough period of your life, you need to be kind to yourself. You need to just accept circumstances for what they are. And there will be a period of time where you will blame everything around you and everyone around you for those. And I would say don't blame yourself for that, because that is a natural part of figuring out what it means to be going through tough times.
Can I ask you?
Yes.
Can I ask you this? Because I think, let's say, for someone who were at the time of your age, what have been the things that work for you at the time to help you to get through that process? Yeah. If you
being kind to yourself. I was the type of person that used to get annoyed hearing that. And I still occasionally am. Being kind to yourself, it's a very short sentence of almost nothing helpful. And then I started to actually put the work into what that kind of means. And you realize, it's right. It's so annoying, but it's right. You start to realize that when things are tough, you are going to make some really weird decisions. You're going to do some crazy kind of things at times, and you're going to be self-destructive in a range of ways, and you're going to feel desire to hide that about yourself, even from your own self. But that's just not the way. You got to forgive yourself for those moments. You got to forgive yourself, because regardless, when times are tough, you are going to resort to some pretty strange behavior at times. perhaps self-destructive behavior, and some people will maybe be judgmental about that. But no matter what, if times are tough, you got to do what you got to do to get through it, because there are enough people in the world that don't get through it. Whatever you do, as long as you get through it, no matter what you look like on the other side, as long as you're not dead, or you're not in prison, or you're not coming out of it with the kind of regrets that have you making even more bad decisions, as long as you don't go through those situations, you're fine. You're fine.
And what is there anyone in your life during that time have been a pivotal role or someone? I mean, like what sparked that change? Even yeah,
I've had a few people I can very much. So you might be able to tell just from the way I'm speaking, I was very much a stutterer when I grew up.
no,
I'm a little better nowadays.
No,
I had a really big stuttering issue. So almost from year 1 or year 2, I had my speech teacher who I worked with for over 10 years now, did exams and all sorts, and I learned a lot about poetry, and I learned a lot about speaking and acting, and it was that kind of thing which motivated me to be able to present myself in a certain kind of way, be able to speak in any kind of comprehensible way, and that has kind of shaped me a lot, because I am a person that focuses very much on meaning, and I care about how people receive the words that I'm saying and that they understand me correctly, because being misunderstood is a horrible feeling sometimes, especially when you know that another person is misperceiving you. I think that I've directed my life a lot.
I didn't know. I thought you were very articulate. I thought you enunciate your words beautifully. I thought you were just if you didn't tell me, I wouldn't even have thought about that. Yeah.
It's quite funny, actually. I got a lot of my accent. I have a lot of fun with accents. I watched a lot of American TV as a kid. Obviously, that was some of the best time of kids' television. So I got a little bit of American vernacular every now and then. Yes. But then through my speech training, I gained a lot of British kind of speaking styles as well. When, especially my sister, who lived in Britain for a very long time, whenever I meet some of her friends, they ask me, "Oh, when did you live with your sister?" And I was like, "I didn't, but you sound so British." And then my sister just blows up. She goes, "He doesn't sound British." And I don't always think I do either. It very much just has to do with the day. But that also is kind of a big thing for me as well. It's the freedom, it's the realization that the borders of either culture or ways of speaking or just ways of going about life are extremely messy in the modern day. So I think of my own self, I think of my own voice even, I think of many different components of myself as being something that takes bits from a lot of different cultures. I don't speak Chinese, but I speak Spanish because I enjoyed learning it.
Oh, that's awesome.
I want to take pieces from everywhere because I think that being an example of somebody that is kind of random, that just takes pieces from so many different walks of life, people like that will be the ones that kind of are the blueprints of variety, diversity, and not limiting yourself to only one style of thinking.
Can I share this with you? I had Sean Robinson from CEO of Mental Health Foundations talk to me yesterday. It was this Monday. Their question was the same. In the end, conclusions about who he was and who he is when he was younger and where he is now is exactly what you just say. Every decent bit of who you are make out a bigger piece of who you are. You know, like that's why I say I have to talk to you, because I found you have so much depth of who you are that really just show at your age, you know, like you can come to that conclusion. That is just amazing. Yeah.
I think identity has been a huge thing for me. I mean, Western and Eastern identities, they very much exist and they very much have their influences. And when you have those kind of influences that completely collide within you sometimes, you have to be making choices on them maybe a bit sooner. And I think that's kind of also a generational thing. I think a lot of this generation has been faced with a lot of colliding ethical decision making, more so than previously. I think history has had a tendency, or at least societies in history has had a tendency of telling everyone within that society to believe in the same thing. And it is only recently where we go, actually, the diversity of opinions, of beliefs, it's fine as long as it's not harmful. As long as it's not harmful, then you can believe whatever you want to believe or be whoever you want to be. And I think that that's what's made, on a larger scale, this generation, my generation, a bit more free thinking, or at least thinking about things a bit sooner than the previous. That's the hope. That's the belief.
I have a questions to you though. I mean, like, let's say if you can go back to your younger self, even younger, of course.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a baby.
I know, I'm so mean. I keep teasing you on that. Legend. I born in 1972.
Oh, what happened in 72? 72, that's how. 70s was a fun decade.
No, because what I mean is, like, so if I say, like 30 years ago, even when in 2000, yeah, in year 2000, you hasn't even born yet.
Born in 2002, thank you.
But if I go back to year 2000, you haven't even.
That's still accurate.
Yeah. No. Let's say you can go back to the younger self, like, at that time, what would be one advice you would give it to him?
Say the one piece of advice. It's interesting because I think the one piece of advice I'd give myself now would have changed the way that I've gone about life and think about things on a very large extent. Maybe in a negative way, but it is still something that I would have hoped for a younger version of myself, which is just to take things a bit less seriously. Nothing is as big as what a younger version of me thought it was. And I know I'm still being told that from people around me now, and maybe that's just something that we always think, is that things are always bigger than they actually are, and it's only with hindsight that we realize it's fine. But in the end, a young version of me, I could characterize myself through anxiety. I was such an anxious kid about every single social circumstance, and that shaped a lot of me. I am so strong on behavior. I'm so strong on creating a theory of people to understand each other because of that social anxiety within me. And that led to a lot of behavior from me, which I'm no longer proud of. But in the end, it still shaped me. So it's a double-edged sword in that kind of sense. In the end, I think that I would tell myself to calm down a bit, to take things a little less seriously. But at the same time, it's that seriousness which kind of made me who I am now. So complicated.
I hear you completely because of that. That's why you were so curious about the world. Like that's why you were so curious about things that happening in your life. But what you also say that is during that time you were too young to even understand what it is, so you don't necessarily have a skill and understanding on how to channel that. Yeah.
When I first went on my SSRI meds, within the first couple of days of taking them, I started to realize just how much was going on in the background of my brain. This was only maybe 4 years ago or so, maybe not even actually, that when I started taking those meds, I sort of go, wow, I can actually breathe. I used to describe my thinking as I can hear every one of my thoughts. And when you're an anxious person, those thoughts are just constant, and that is exhausting. So once I took those meds, it just closed out those voices, those thoughts that were going on in the background, and I could just think for myself for once. And all of that came from anxiety in the end.
I can so relate to it. Not until antidepressant medication didn't really work for me, even though I'm still taking it. But it wasn't until I was prescribed, diagnosed with my ADHD, having, like the medications, and then suddenly I don't have to pretend I'm focusing when talking to someone. Otherwise, my brain is like going 100 miles per hour, but I can't even really pay attention to the other person who is talking. I just have to pretend.
That must be troublesome when interviewing people.
That's why I didn't do what I'm doing now, like editing. Yeah, but I mean, I always very attuned to people's feelings, but it's just my mind always constantly thinking, so I can so relate to what you say.
I leaned into it in the end. I mean, maybe not fully, but I am at least working on recognizing the fact that at least my mind, or at least I think a lot of people's minds, are very chaotic. My mind is so chaotic. Even now, after being on the meds for a number of years, I can still say that I'm thinking about 1,000 things at once. And I've started to navigate that in my own way by going, if someone's around me, I'm just telling them my thoughts. I am just being the person that is explaining lore for The Legend of Zelda for absolutely no reason.
I would blur out things most inappropriate a lot. Right? I didn't have that. I like when it's just, like it takes so much of myself to pretend not to say stupid things in front of other people. If I let loose, I still do that.
It took a long time for me to learn that once you learn how diverse people are in their personalities, being that kind of person, being the kind of person that will blurt something out or maybe can't focus completely, actually, that those aren't bad quality traits. Like, you see in any kind of media or things like that, it's become really obvious that the people who are just zipping around or can't focus on one thing or the other, at least as I see them as very positive personality traits, because these are the people that blur so much of themselves just because they're trying to focus on everything that's going on at the one time. So
True.
I'm thinking when people say talk about like those kind of personality types and what they look for in friends and things like that, I will very much look to the people that are a bit awkward, a bit zippy, all over the place, because those people are honest. Those people are honest because they can't hold other thoughts in. All of their thoughts are out there.
You always know what I'm thinking, or at least my facial expressions. Oh, go back to your Aidan. I mean, with like your journey and is there any things that I haven't asked you that you would like to share?
Good question. Well, very general question. You have to think. I talked about my stuttering, talked about my education a bit. I feel like I'm not telling enough stories. I remember when you were interviewing me, you had so many stories which ended up being such fantastic evidence for the ideas that you were talking about.
Oh my God, I just want you. I don't really care about theories. Like you gave me such a great insight into your world, and I don't because as I say, I can feel there's a depth of you coming out from, the research that you are doing. And so even at the time, I was like, these kids, have some incredible insight that probably even some of the people around my age didn't even have, so why? And that was my curiosity. What set these kids to have such a curiosity about the world, about the nuances, about the hidden hues of human being that not even all adults can see?
I think it's just a pathway. I think journey of self-discovery kind of stuff, it's a pathway that not everybody in life has to take. You can get through life without having a lot of these troubles, but I think it still happens to enough people. I think it's still important enough that we have to talk about it. We still have to put in the work and realize that because there is diversity in the world, you have to cater to a lot of different types of things. And if a person says that they've never gone through self-confidence issues or mental health issues, I'll believe them and say, fantastic, good for you, great, I love that for you. But my process has been focusing on self-identity and that kind of thing. And a lot of other stuff has fallen because of that. Let's not get that mixed up. I've put kind of self-understanding at the forefront of my life, and that has made other things fall at times. But I can very happily say that despite that, I'm very happy with who I am kind of now. I'm happy with my social life and things. I can actually see a future, which asked me a couple years ago, that would have been a difficult question.
And honestly, it's not just that you certainly care enough as well. I can have a feelings that there's a sense of mission, purpose that drive you to want to make this world a better place. Do you want to talk about that a bit? We haven't reached on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've definitely had to put work into my own values, especially in my own therapy. And in the end, trying to create a better world kind of just for other people has been such a big thing for me. I've always been very, very driven just to help people when I can. In the end, that's what made it really hard to have to focus on myself when my mental illness was the worst, because you have to put a lot of work into yourself, and suddenly your mind becomes very inward thinking. And that was against my nature in a couple of ways. But how did I reach the point of help other people? I don't know. I wouldn't say that I put great action into it, or at least not yet. I don't know. Ask me a question.
Because it's not necessarily as an action as well, because it's almost like transcendent into something else, like you're talking about when you were angry as a teenager to finally accept who you are and taking what you understand around the world, what you study, and mesh it in a sense that you want to help other people to make sense of their world as well. And that is how I feel your journey has been, and this like a very pivotal moment of your life as well, especially during your study, because it's not just about a piece of research. It's a lot more than that. That there's a mission built behind your research too.
I think understanding has everything to do with it. I think being able to understand more about the people around you and actually having the willingness to have the conversation with the people around you is everything, because so much of our conflicts in the world, or even just socially, so much of the time just comes from misunderstanding. So I think that if we just open our ways up for communication a bit, recognize that you're going to make a lot of mistakes at times, then yeah, that has everything to do with why I operate the way I do, because I, as a kid, felt very misunderstood. I mean, I feel like that's a very common feeling, but I feel like I was misunderstood because I was being told I was asking the wrong questions or thinking about things in a way that isn't actually productive. And in a certain way, that's true. It's allowed to be true that that I was operating in a way that maybe hasn't put me on a very clear career line. And to some people, that would be the priority, and that makes it absolutely true. But for me personally, I was asking the questions that I want to know, and I don't think,
yes,
and they're the questions that I can now answer. So I don't, as a kid, I think most people are just learning what is okay around them, and they're looking at people who are older than them, or people who are of higher rank, whatever that means, and anything, and you will take that as a blueprint. And in that situation, I go, cool. I've had influences in my life, people who have meant a lot to me and taught me a great many things. But in the end, it's still about making it your own, because otherwise, if you're not doing it the way that you want to do it, you're not going to be able to do it any good way. You've got to be able to do it the way that works for you.
Thank you, Aidan. I mean, like, to be honest, it's such a honor and privilege to talk to you, to like make me to understand your journey, the journey that you go through. And to be honest, if I'm just feeling so touched, and there's a point when you share about some of your life, I almost choke up a tear, because I had sensed that there's the process you went through to come to where you are today has not been easy. Or I don't think people understand. As because I'm anxious kid as well, so I know how hard it is when you being anxious all the time, and there's a lot of things that even adults not necessarily able to understand. There were things that say to you probably not even true about who you are as a human being, and then you have to later on unpack it yourself to relearn who you are as a human being. And Aidan, I just couldn't be more proud of who you are and who you become. It just touched my heart so deep. Thank you.
I want you to know, Ivan, for the recording or not, you are like meeting you, being able to learn about you for my research stuff has been fantastic. You have had a great career path, working in the exact field, working on these exact topics that I feel so strongly for. Like, you are an inspiration for me in that sense. You're following the same kind of path that I want to. So I am super grateful to be able to have this time with you.
No, it's honest mine. Honestly, I mean, like what I say, you young man, you have to go out and shine. Please promise me you will never compromise yourself to anyone else. I love every bit about man. It's incredible. I am so touched. by the journey that, and yeah, man.
Look, I don't think, I know you'll disagree with me. I really don't think my experience is anything special. I'm just a person who has thought a wee bit too. There's always the person in your circle that you're always wondering why they're thinking about stuff in such a deep sense, or overthinking. That you will always have a person in your circle that is clearly overthinking a situation too much. But that was just me. I'm just a person who's then studied it.
No, I mean, I don't think people understand the vulnerability that one's had to go through when you have to be so candid and honest with your past experience and with yourself as who you are. And that shows enormous courage. I know in society, we probably haven't really gave enough credit. If everybody has such a high conscientious and consciousness about being so truthful with themselves, this world would be such a better place.
Gotta be truthful with ourselves first. Gotta work on ourselves so that we are happy with the kind of person we are to expose to everyone else as well.
There's work for that. Thank you. Thank you so much, Aidan. You are
Thank you, Ivan. You've listened to me